It's been well over a month since the start of the war in Ukraine. Against all odds, Ukrainians have held firm. Admittedly, Russian forces have gained territory, but at tremendous cost. No less than 7 senior Russian generals have been killed in action, and up to 40,000 Russian troops have either been killed, wounded, taken prisoner, or are missing in action. Meanwhile, on a hardware level, Russia has lost at least 16 aircraft, 35 helicopters, 289 tanks, and more than 1,000 other vehicles have been destroyed, disabled, or captured. The number of losses is likely much higher, but these are visual confirmations that serve as an accurate baseline. Ukraine has sustained losses in its own right, but not nearly as much as Russia. Terrain, morale, and logistics make up Ukraine's strategy, but much of its success is also owed to the tactical weapons employed by Ukrainian units. They make all the difference on the ground and in the air. So, let's talk about the game-changing tactics and weapons Ukraine uses to create a near-perfect handshake between tactics and strategy. Today's video is sponsored by Masterworks. There is a lot ongoing in the world. Parallel punishment is what the experts call it when inflation and global crisis strike at the same time. Traditional portfolios heavy on stocks and bonds could be on the chopping block. Even JP Morgan says that alternative assets and investment strategies are essential. Right away, when most people hear that, they think of oil, gold, real estate, etc. But the big boys like Citi, Bank of America, and Deloitte, they all look at alternatives like fine art. In and of itself, fine art has been an inflation hedge for billionaires for years, hoarding works from Picasso, Monet, and Banksy. Now, I'm not a billionaire, but by using the Masterworks platform, I can invest in art as well. It's the only platform that allows retail investors to own a slice of artwork. Use the link in the description to skip the waitlist. Doing so genuinely supports our channel and gives us the means to do more content. So go check it out. Just be careful in everything related to investing. There's no such thing as risk-free. Ukraine's armed forces have come a long way since 2014, when Russian troops took over Crimea without a fight. Ukraine took that defeat to heart and steadily overhauled its military command structure. Instead of the Soviet top-down hierarchy, junior officers were given new rules of engagement and encouraged to take autonomous decisions in the field. The new doctrine worked, and it's the reason why Donbas separatists never managed to push up to the entire provincial boundaries of Donetsk and Luhansk. By contrast, the Russian armed forces are characterized by a top-down hierarchy, still adhering to the Soviet way of decision-making. But Russia hasn't exactly stood still either. Its most significant military overhaul since the 1990s comes in combined arms warfare. The primary Russian fighting unit is the Battalion Tactical Group. These are combined arms units designed to be quick and adaptable while hauling heavy firepower. Each battalion tactical group has 10 tanks, 33 infantry vehicles, 18 self-propelled artillery pieces, 6 multiple rocket launchers, 12 mobile surface-to-air vehicles, and flexible formations of support units. The format of the Battalion Tactical Group allows it to switch from rapid assault to support operations to long-range attacks. The inherent weakness, however, is its lack of manpower. Each group has roughly 200 infantrymen, which is not nearly enough to protect the flanks of such a large group. But when facing NATO armies, that wouldn't be necessarily a problem, since both sides would engage one another in conventional ways. And that's how the Russian combined arms units were trained to fight, facing off similarly deployed NATO combined arms units. Russia has an estimated 170 of these battalion tactical groups, of which 100 have been deployed in Ukraine. The initial plan was to move the Russian units towards road junctions, separate the Ukrainian forces from the urban areas, and then force the cities into submission. But in war, things rarely ever go to plan. In the opening phase of the conflict, Russian forces failed to secure the supply lines running into Kharkiv, Sumy, Chernihiv, Mariupol, Mykolaiv, and Kiev. The sheer size of the battalion tactical groups turned into chink in the armor. The problem is that regardless of the number of Russian vehicles deployed in Ukraine, the convoys had to travel by road. But the width of the roads and the speed of the front vehicles restricted the mobility of the Russian battalion tactical groups. Ukrainian light infantry units exploited that vulnerability by taking up positions in the adjacent villages and setting up ambushes near the major roads to target the Russian convoys passing through. The key to these ambush sites was, and still is, the American-made Javelin anti-tank missile system. The FGM-148 Javelin is a sophisticated, portable weapon that is easy to use. 2 users can operate it, and it can hit targets up to 4 kilometers. Once the target is locked, the missile does the tracking autonomously. What makes the Javelin such an effective anti-armor weapon is its double warhead and flight trajectory. The missile is programmed to climb to a higher altitude and then dive on top of the target where the armor is thinnest. The Javelin's first warhead destroys the reactive bricks most Russian tanks are coated in, while the second warhead destroys the main armor. Nearly every hit by the Javelin is an instant kill. A light version anti-tank weapon is the NLAW, short for Next Generation Light Anti-Tank Weapons. Produced by Britain and Sweden, NLAW is a fire-and-forget weapon with an effective range of 800 meters. It's also much cheaper than the Javelin. While a single Javelin missile costs about $200,000, a single shot by an NLAW unit costs about $40,000. That may seem expensive, but these are weapons that can destroy multi-million-dollar vehicles. So, when properly used, anti-tank weapons can tilt the economics of warfare. In the days leading up to the Ukraine war, the United States and the United Kingdom sent multiple cargo planes full of Javelins and NLAWs to Ukraine. And since then, these weapons have formed the backbone of the Ukrainian light infantry. Meanwhile, from the air, Ukraine uses the TB2 drone as a long-range weapon. The Bayraktar TB2 is a Turkish-made medium-altitude, long-endurance unmanned combat aerial vehicle. It operates at an altitude of roughly 6 kilometers, placing it out of range of many air defense systems, and it can stay in the air for at least 24 hours. Plus, the drone has a sophisticated electronic warfare system that makes it difficult to track, and it carries 4 highly accurate micro-munitions that can take out military targets worth millions of dollars. Dubbed as the AK-47 of the 21st century, the Bayraktar TB2 can also be equipped with rapid mapping pods, which can map thousands of square kilometers of terrain at ultra-high resolution. The imagery intelligence can then be relayed to artillery and rocket batteries to destroy enemy units from afar. The TB2 essentially gives the user eyes in the sky, and that form of combined arms turns the drone from a tactical device into a strategic one. Now, when Poland purchased 24 Bayraktar TB2 drones at a cost of $270 million, the package included after-sales services like simulators, spare parts, training, logistical support, SAR radars, mobile control stations, and laser-guided munitions. This means that a fully armed Bayraktar TB2 costs a little over $11 million, while an unarmed drone is estimated to cost roughly $5 million. The Bayraktar TB2 may not take first place regarding combat performance, but its low cost and high quality after-sales services makes it one of the premier combat drones in the world. Before the war, Ukraine had purchased over a dozen of Bayraktar TB2s from Turkey, It also signed an agreement to jointly manufacture dozens more on Ukrainian soil. Still later, in early March 2022, the Ukrainian Defense Ministry stated that it had procured an unspecified number of TB2 drones and that they were ready to enter combat. On the battlefield, Ukrainian forces have used Bayraktar TB2 drones to destroy high-value enemy assets. The low price of the drone makes high-risk, high-reward tactics more feasible since the TB2 can be deployed with little consequence. The final game-changing weapon employed by Ukraine is the Stinger anti-aircraft missile. Developed by the United States, the FIM-92 Stinger is an air defense system on a budget. It's man-portable, easy to use, and gives soldiers on the ground the ability to contest the airspace above. The Stinger fires an infrared homing surface-to-air missile that, once fired, tracks to its target autonomously. The missile can reach an altitude of 3.5 kilometers and a horizontal distance of 4 and 8 kilometers. Now, that's not much to go on, but when employed in large quantities and spread over a large area, it is enough to deny air superiority, at least partially. Thus far, Ukraine has received hundreds of Stinger missiles from a host of NATO member states. They've been effective against low-flying aircraft and attack helicopters. Russian aircraft are currently experiencing a shortage of precision-guided munitions and thus need to fly low sorties to deliver unguided rockets to their targets. But by doing so, the Russian aircraft come within Stinger range. As of this writing, Russia has lost 16 aircraft and 35 helicopters. Part of this is undoubtedly the work of Stinger missiles. By the way, these numbers come from the Oryx blog, which uses open source images to complete its listing. You'll find the link in the description box if you want to explore it on your own. Now, the problem of the Stinger, as is the case with the Javelin, is that when procured in large numbers, disarmament becomes difficult. Not all units will be accounted for when things eventually settle down in Ukraine. Some Stingers will, regrettably, fall into the wrong hands. And these are weapons with far-reaching geopolitical consequences. Imagine a Stinger being used to shoot down commercial aircraft during takeoff or landing. That is an ominous notion, but one that needs to be addressed. Taken together, it's clear that numbers aren't everything in armed conflicts. Ukraine is proof that smaller militaries are not necessarily doomed when facing a military powerhouse. Javelins, Stingers, and Bayraktars are game-changing weapons that equalize the playing field. They also cause geopolitical rifts whenever they're supplied to controversial places. For instance, when the Stinger was deployed to the Afghan Mujahideen to shoot down Soviet helicopters, it helped tip the balance of power. Now, decades later, that same weapon is once more denying aerial superiority to Russian forces. Javelins, Stingers, and Bayraktars are the types of weapon each country needs to have in its inventory, especially smaller countries. From an economic lens, these are affordable weapons that more than make up for their cost by destroying multi-million-dollar assets. That return of investment is redefining the way nations think of warfare. After all, who would want to